Good morning. It's Tuesday the 24th, and this is chapter 35 of The House of the Scorpion, El Dia de los Muertos. The walk downhill was easy, but Matt found he had to stop and rest frequently. He ached all over from his ordeal the night before, and some of his scratches were infected. He looked back to see Tauntaun watching gravely from the shadows at the top of the pass. The snout of the shrimp harvester was just visible. Fidelito bounced up and down, waving the flashlight. "Do you think he can see me?" "I'm sure he can," said Matt. Sometimes Fidelito's energy made him feel tired. They went on, with Fidelito asking questions about who they were going to see. Matt told him about Maria and the convent of Santa Clara. He didn't know what the convent looked like, but he made up a description to entertain the little boy. "It's a castle on a hill," he said. "It has a tower with a red roof on each corner. Every morning the girls raise a flag in the garden." So Matt's making all that up. "Like the keepers," said Fidelito. "Yes," said Matt. "Every morning the keepers lined up the boys and raised a flag with the emblem of the beehive over a factory. The boys recited the 5 principles of good citizenship and the 4 attitudes leading to right mindfulness, before trooping into the cafeteria for plankton gruel. This flag has a picture of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The girls sing Buenos Dias, Paloma Blanca, her favorite song, and then they have a toast and honey for breakfast." Fidelito sighed. Matt wondered whether the keepers had managed to wake up from their drugged sleep. Were they all lying dead like poor Furball? And would Tauntaun be arrested for murder? "Can the keepers get water in their compound?" he asked. "Flaco said they could drink out of the toilet," said Fidelito. "It's hard, but it's fair," Matt thought, with a grim smile. "That smell is making me sick," said Fidelito. Matt lifted his head. The stench had been growing so gradually he hadn't registered it. "We must be close to the river," he said. He scratched the skin of a lemon and held it to Fidelito's nose. "This won't kill the smell, but it should keep you from throwing up." Matt heard a gurgling, thrashing noise somewhere to the left, and shone a flashlight at it. A wide black ribbon of water disappeared into a giant drain. It glistened with oil, and here and there shapes struggled to the surface and were pulled down again. "Is that a fish?" whispered Fidelito. "I don't think so," Matt said, shining the light on a long, greasy-looking tentacle that whipped out of the flood and struggled wildly to hang on to the shore. "I think that's the reason Tauntaun told you to stay away from the river." The tentacle lost the battle and disappeared down the drain with a horrible sucking sound. "Let's run," begged the little boy. The ground trembled as the vast river plunged underneath the road. The smell almost made Matt faint. Bad air, he thought wildly. If they passed out here, no one would rescue them. "Faster," Matt gasped. But in fact, it was he who was slow. Fidelito bounced ahead like a little monkey. They went up a rise. A slight breeze blew the nauseous stench of the river away, and Matt collapsed with his chest heaving. He began to cough. He felt like he was being strangled. "Oh no," he thought. "I can't have an asthma attack now." He'd been free of the illness since he'd left opium, but the smell of the river had brought it back. He bent over, trying to fill his lungs. Fidelito frantically scratched his lemon and held it to Matt's nose. "Smell, smell," he cried, but it didn't help. Matt was drenched in sweat from his efforts to get air. "I'll go for help," shouted Fidelito into his ear, as though Matt were deaf as well. "Stop, it's dangerous," Matt wanted to say, but maybe it was just as well the little boy went on. There was nothing Matt could do to protect him. How much time passed, Matt couldn't say. The world had shrunk to a tiny patch of road where he struggled to stay alive. But all at once he felt hands lift him and an inhaler, held to his face. Matt grabbed it and breathed for all he was worth. The attack faded. The world began to expand again. He saw a brown, weathered face etched by deep wrinkles. "Look what the river hopped up, guapo," said the woman. Guapo, a name meaning handsome, hunkered by the side of the road and gave Matt a big, almost toothless grin. He was at least 80 years old. The kid picked a lousy place to swim," he said. "I was joking," said the woman. "Nobody swims in that river and survives." Can you walk? She asked Matt. Matt got to his feet. He took a few unsteady steps and nodded. Stay with us, the woman said. I don't suppose your mother is expecting you home tonight. He's a runaway orphan. Look at his uniform, said Guapo. You call those rags a uniform? The woman laughed. Don't worry, Nino. We won't tell anyone. We hate the keepers as much as you do. Chacho, Matt gasped out. The little one told us about him, said Guapo. Look, the ambulance is already on its way. He pointed up and Matt saw a hovercraft pass overhead. The anti-gravity stirred the hair on his arms. With Guapo on one side and the woman who identified herself as Sister Consuela on the other, Matt made his way along the road. He felt lightheaded. Everything seemed unreal. The dark road, the starry sky, and the old man and woman who had guided his steps. Presently they came to a high wall. Consuela pressed a button and the door slid open to show a scene so unexpected, Matt wondered whether he was dreaming after all. Inside, flanked by graceful palo verde trees, were grapes as far as Matt could see. Each one was decorated with palm fronds, flowers, photographs, statues, and hundreds of glittering candles. The candles sat in red, blue, green, yellow, and purple glasses and looked like fragments of rainbow dancing over the ground. Some of the graves had offerings of food as well. Tortillas, bowls of chili, bottles of soda, fruit, and whole herds of tiny donkeys, horses, and pigs made out of pastry or sugar. On one grave was a beautiful little cat with a pink sugar nose and a tail curled around its feet. Matt saw people sitting in the shadows and speaking to one another in quiet voices. Where are we? He murmured. A cemetery, Chico, said Consuela. Don't tell me you've never seen one. Not like this, Matt thought. The Alacrans were buried in a marble mausoleum not far from the hospital. It was the size of a house and decorated with so many angels it looked like a convention of them. You could see through the front door to what appeared to be chests of drawers on either side. The name of a departed Alacran was inscribed on each long drawer. Matt guessed you could slide them out like the ones in his room, where Celia packed his shirts and socks. The Egypts, of course, were buried in mass graves, out in the desert. Tam Lin said their resting places were impossible to distinguish from landfill. This looks like a party, Matt faltered. It is, cried Fidelito, suddenly appearing from amid a group of women who were unpacking picnic baskets. We're so lucky! Of all the days we could have come, we picked El Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. It's my favorite holiday in the whole year. He munched on a sandwich. Matt couldn't understand it. Celia had celebrated every holiday in the calendar, but never had she mentioned this one. She put out shoes for the wise men to leave gifts at Christmas. She colored eggs for Easter. She served roast turkey on Thanksgiving and heart-shaped cakes on St. Valentine's Day. She had special ceremonies for San Mateo, Matt's patron saint, and for her own Santa Cecilia. And of course there was El Patron's birthday party. But never had anyone dreamed of throwing a party for death. Yet here Matt saw, on grave after grave, statues of skeletons playing guitars or dancing or driving around in little plastic hover cars. Skeleton mothers took skeleton children for walks. Skeleton brides married skeleton grooms. Skeletons' dogs sniffed lampposts, and skeleton horses galloped with death riding on their backs. I found a typo in the book. Skeletons' dogs should just be skeleton dogs. And now Matt became aware of an odor. The foul stench of the river was kept away by the wall, but the air was full of another scent that made every nerve in Matt's body tighten with alarm. It smelled like Felicia. It was as though her ghost hovered before him, breathing the heavy fumes of whiskey into his face. He sat down, suddenly dizzy. Are you sick? Asked Fidelito. Guapo, find another inhaler in my bag, said Consuela. No, I'm all right, said Matt. The smell here reminds me of something. It's only the copal incense we burn for the dead, Consuela said. Maybe it reminds you of your mama or papa. But you mustn't be unhappy. Tonight is when we welcome them back to let them know how we're doing and to offer them their favorite foods. They eat? Matt looked at the tamales, bowls of chili and loaves of bread decorated with pink sugar. Not as we do, darling. They like to smell things, said Consuela. That's why we serve so many foods with good odor. Mi abuelita said they come back as droves or mice, as doves or mice, she said. I mustn't chase anything away if it wants to eat, said Fiolito. That's also true, said Consuela, putting her arm around the little boy. Matt thought about the alacrans in their marble mausoleum. Perhaps El Patron was there, in the top drawer, of course. Then Matt remembered Celia saying Patron wanted to be buried in an underground storeroom with all his birthday presents. Was anyone putting food out for him tonight? Had Celia prepared tamales and bowls of menudo? But Celia was hiding in the stables, and Mr. Alacran wouldn't put out so much as a single chili bean because he hated El Patron. Matt blinked away tears. How can anyone celebrate death? But it's part of us, Consuela said softly. Mi abuelita said I mustn't be afraid of skeletons because I carry my own around inside, said Fiolito. She told me to feel my ribs and make friends with them. Your grandmother was very wise, said Consuela. I'm off to town now for the fiesta, said Guapo, who had put on a handsome black sombrero and slung a guitar over his shoulder. Do you kids want me to drop you off somewhere? Consuela laughed. You old rogue. You only want to chase women. I don't have to chase anyone, the old man replied haughtily. Come home in one piece, Guapito. I worry about you. She kissed him and straightened the sombrero on his head. What about it, kids? Shall I take you to see Chacho? He's in the hospital at the convent of Santa Clara. That's where we're going, Fidelito cried. What about the keepers? Matt said. They stay off the streets when there's a party. Too much fun, said Consuela. But just in case, she fished around in her large bag and brought out a pair of masks. I was saving these for my grandchildren, but I'll get them something else. She fitted a mask over Fidelito's face. Matt felt strange tightening in his chest when he saw the skull staring back at him from Fidelito's skinny body. Put yours on too, urged the little boy. Matt couldn't move. He couldn't take his eyes off Fidelito's face. I've got one of my own, said Guapo, slipping on his mask. That's an improvement, believe me, said Consuela. So she's insulting her husband to make fun of him. Guapo capered around, his black sombrero bobbing over his skull face. Matt knew they were trying to cheer him up, but he only felt horror. Listen, mi vida, said Consuela. Matt flinched at the sound of his old name. I don't know what bad things happened to you, but it's a matter of safety to wear the mask now. The keepers won't bother you if you're wearing a costume. Matt saw the wisdom of her suggestion. Very reluctantly, he pulled the mask over his head. It fitted him like a second skin. With holes for his eyes, nose and mouth, it felt like being buried alive, and he had to struggle against panic. He took a deep breath and willed the horror away. Muchas gracias, he said. De nada, Consuela replied. Well, it looks like they found somewhere safe, and they are moments away from discovering the convent of Santa Clara, where Maria is, and apparently Chacho is already there, being treated for the injuries that he suffered when he was in the boneyard. So, next time, we might get to see Maria again in Chapter 36, The Castle on the Hill, which is how Matt actually described the convent to Fidelito. He told him that it was a castle on a hill. So, tomorrow we'll read Chapter 36.